Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Leadership Squad. I'm Ronak Harait.
And I'm Mandar Kudegaonkar. Together, we will be talking about real leadership experiences, things many of us have already faced or will face at some point in our lives.
Yeah. And today's topic is one of the most important topics that we feel that every leader remembers very clearly. It was the first time when you were like appointed a leader and you had the expression of wait, I am a leader. And a lot of people don't really realize that they're actually leading every day in their lives. And it comes to them as a genuine surprise when they're suddenly placed in a leadership role. So this episode will kind of walk you through those experiences that we had as we stepped into the leadership role and how that can help you moving forward. Mandar, when was the first time you experienced this and whether it was by choice or it was by circumstance?
Whoa, yeah, you take me back here. There are multiple stories that I can think of, but there's one that really comes on the surface. I was a recent graduate, and I was working in a solar construction project in Gujarat, India. This was one of the first three solar projects being built in India. This was 2011 period. So the problem was not a lot of workforce really understood what a solar project meant and what constructing a solar project actually included. Looking at the project, one day we were at site trying to understand the designs because there's a lot of people, a lot of labor around us trying to make sure what's going on. We saw a truck loaded with some steel structures came on the site, and we were looking at the designs, and I realized that nobody actually understood what to do. And this was our first truck, by the way. So just looking at the site engineers and site managers to do something about it, they had no clue. And that's where I realized I think I need to do something. What I did there was I got into the truck and I verbally started telling every labor what to do. And this was not prescribed, this was not on the design. So we essentially started doing the process realization as we go. And at the same time, I asked another engineer to actually record what I have been saying. So this essentially became a standard operational practice, or we call it SOP in any
Mhm,
project.
mhm.
And what I realized in this process was there was a sense of accountability that I had to imbibe or I had to share. And for that brief period of time, I had to represent my leadership qualities because everybody was so confused and had
Mhm.
no idea. And the project was pretty much stopped for a few hours there. So, taking that particular situation in my own hands and helping the team driving through, and not only doing that, but also making sure that there is a documentation that will help the further processes along was definitely very influential on getting the project back on track, getting people aligned, and people also realized that it was like a physical sense of representation that yes, this is new, but there is a solution. But how to get to the solution, that particular process or that particular step that I took was able to sort of show to all the people around us. So
Right.
everybody started doing the same thing. They also started taking the actions, recording those actions, making sure that these actions actually are followed by another ones, and they're following the designs. So for next 2 weeks, we were essentially following this whole process, which ended up into a sort of a Bible, you may call it, for conducting or constructing a solar project. And not
Right.
only in our own company, we actually were able to give it to different consultants, to different, other companies also to help them understand what is going on.
Right. So that kind of
So
helped you go on from a shell from an engineer to a leader, right? That was the point at which you realized,
exactly.
wait, I am the leader here and I need to take that leap of faith and really lead going forward and help people and guide them.
Exactly. And to a physical representation, I was able to demonstrate that. So that was
Yeah,
very
yeah. Yeah, no, that was a very interesting experience and a very fantastic story. That kind of helped you realize, hey, wait, I'm a leader now and I need to take the first steps to help and guide people. My leadership experience goes back even further. It was the year 2000. It's been 26 years. It takes me back, and saying that out loud makes me feel kind of old. But I was selected by my coach as the captain of my under 14 cricket team. And at that point, I had been playing semi professional cricket for about 4 to 5 years, and I was a decent player, but definitely I wasn't the best in the team. So when my coach selected me as the captain, needless to say, it was a controversial decision. The superstars in the team wanted to be the captain as well. Years later, I understood, I was mature enough to understand and ask my coach why he picked me. His answer has stayed with me for a long time. He said, I needed someone who could hold a team of superstars together through discipline and dedication. I was always punctual, followed instructions, and made sure the message was delivered clearly to my team. And most importantly, the team trusted me. So it's not necessary that, superstars in the team or subject matter experts can be good leaders, right? They can be, but they cannot be as well. But the leader has to be someone who the entire team trusts and supports and moves everyone in the same direction. So I
Absolutely.
learned that a long time ago, and that year we won the state championship without losing a single game. So that was my start of experiencing, wait, I am a leader. I didn't even think of myself as a leader before my coach saw it in me, and then I started honing those skills as I move forward in life, in my cricketing and sporting career, as well as the professional career I've been having.
Yeah, this is really powerful, Ronak. And I think the interesting aspect that you're bringing out here is that it doesn't have to be always your work where you
Right.
find your leadership skills. You will always find those everywhere around you whenever you are, like you did during your sports, while you were doing your academia. Also, obviously during your work, I think both of us have had multiple experiences where we realize that we can actually represent leadership. And sort of be these proponents of that particular skill set. And
Hmm.
also, while we are working as a part of family, one has to take, we or our partners have to take accountability or take the situation in hand and actually lead the way forward so that the
Absolutely.
family moves forward. So that's really powerful. And I think that's the message that we are trying to give, isn't it? Like it doesn't matter what form of life you are in. It's leadership comes from action and taking
Hmm.
some decision making, and that's what we are trying to show and share with the listeners here.
Hmm.
And I think what I also want to mention here is when we are selected as a leader, it's not necessarily random. There's always something in us that is either not seen or somebody is seeing. They
Hmm.
observe and they push us into situations, and we have seen both, I guess,
Hmm.
and they sort of trust in our judgment. And that's where we are given this permission to make mistakes and own them and
Hmm.
keep showing these leadership qualities.
Yeah, absolutely. Like once you have been identified as a leader, either situational or kind of put into that position, the next step is to just have confidence that you are there for a reason and you've been chosen for a reason. So build confidence in yourself and start becoming comfortable with leadership, right? Another important thing to do is to kind of pause and breathe and understand, okay, I've been assigned this role as a leader, so should have confidence in myself and then start portraying it to the rest of the team. A relaxed leader naturally comes across as confident, right? So even if you don't feel confident internally, projecting that calm and clarity towards the team makes a big difference. So the team becomes successful, right? And I wanted to say to our listeners that if you're feeling that less confidence is a part of being a new leader, you are not alone. There have been several instances we both have experienced that as well as we are growing towards leadership roles, right? But there are books and podcasts and mentors that we refer to, typically reach out to, and plenty of resources that can help you grow the confidence as a leader. So, Mandar, what are some of the resources that have helped you to gain confidence as a new leader?
Yeah, absolutely. There are some really good books out there that sort of open different facets of leadership. Few of those I'm mentioning here, which are something I keep going back to again and again. One is Extreme Ownership by Joko Willing and Liv Babin. Great book on accountability and ownership and how one can be accountable even though they are not leading a certain team. Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. Simon Sinek has been a very influential to a lot of leaders in corporate and not corporate leaders. I think most of the people already know him by his TED Talk, but he's a very influential writer, and he comes with a very interesting point of views. Definitely recommend that. And for people who are going through some tough decision making, I would recommend Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins.
Mhm.
This book is more oriented towards resilience and endurance of a human being but it does definitely
Mhm.
helps you to make very difficult decisions. And as a leader, as we know, this is something we have to keep doing
Yeah.
regularly.
Yep.
And then there is Just Listen by Mark Goulston. This is about more about listening, which is one of the key aspects of leader.
Mhm.
And then the final, but not the least, the Vision Driven Leader by Michael Hyatt. This is
Mhm.
focused on designing a vision. Every leader wants to define a vision. That's the core of this. And we'll definitely go in deeper levels of vision in our following episodes. But this
Yeah.
book is definitely a must read for those who want to start this journey of leadership.
Yeah. That's a great list, Mandar. We'll make sure for our listeners to include the links to these books in the show notes as well. But the topics that you mentioned are so wide and so many things can be talked about it. For example, you spoke about taking tough decisions. That's something that you and I have been experiencing quite frequently recently. And we have to get thick-skinned in terms of leaders because not everybody is going to be happy with every decision we take, but we have to take that call. That's why we are those leaders. So we'll keep talking about this in future episodes because there's a lot to talk about and a lot to share with our listeners.
Yep, absolutely. And what I want to say here is that from our experience, there's absolutely no reason why one cannot think themselves as a good leader. Even if a person is not very vocal and do not want to talk to a lot of people, they can still
Hmm.
lead situations, various situations, and that itself is leadership. Helping the team in
Absolutely.
every form is leadership. Taking ownership of something is leadership. So it doesn't have to be represented by a team, it has to be represented by the situation. Is something we want to make sure that people understand, and the listeners should definitely note this point, that all of you have been leading in some form, in
Hmm.
personal ways or professional ways, with your friends, with your family, in your office, or in your professional environments. You have been doing something that basically can be considered as a form of leadership. So the key here is recognizing that and embracing that and hone into that even further so that you make even bigger impacts no matter where you are, and no matter which environment you are in.
Exactly. As new leaders, of course, as experienced leaders too, I think Manda, you would agree with this.
Hmm.
We often do not know the answer to some of the things that we are taking decisions on. And that is completely okay. As leaders, we are not expected to know everything. As leaders, we are expected to ask the right questions, stay curious, accept that we don't know everything, and then find out what we need to find out about that question, right? Leadership is not about knowing everything, it's about learning continuously and helping the team learn continuously.
Absolutely. On that note, we believe that you and we hope that you guys have found this episode helpful. It has at least started a small fire in your thought process of, experiencing your past where you have been leaders. And we'll be back soon with another episode from the Leadership Squad.
Yes, Mandar. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And to the listeners out there, let us know what you thought about this episode and feel free to suggest topics you'd like us to discuss. You can find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook at the Leadership Squad Podcast. Until next time, keep learning, keep leading, and keep moving forward. Thank you, everybody.